So that people are romantic about this idea when they talk about shooting to film versus digital, right? And I like it. I understand the romance of it, right? But fundamentally, I'm a pragmatist, right? If I can see my animation immediately, I can be way more experimental or daring with it. I can say, okay, let me just try this, because there's no inertia for trying to do it and then oh, okay, I had to do this in a week. I have to figure it out. So it was really good for trying things out really quickly. I could go to my desk, say, you know what, I'm just going to do something crazy here and shoot it. So animation was a big chunk. It was worth quite a few credits within the program. There was film language, which is a wonderful program. I'm a big fan of live action film, not just animation, which is one of the reasons I wasn't so enamored with animation. I love animation, but I love film as well. And so we did film studies as well, our film language. And then there was, you're testing we're talking some 20 years ago. So what were the other programs? So there was perspective, character design, animation, film language or film study, film language, art history, art history, which is really about animation, which is terrific. That was a great one. Kai Pindel, who was animator from Copenhagen, brilliant. He was one of my instructors at the time. And life drawing, if I didn't say that was one of the classes. I think that's it. Maybe one or two others that percolated in there.
Well, I really loved, trying to, understand the history of animation, because we were all in love with cartoons when we were kids. And it was always, for me, how did they manage to make, hour-and-a-half cartoon if it takes 24 pictures for 1 second? That would mean a lot of pictures, a lot of drawings to make, 90 minutes of it.
Yeah.
And then I Googled, when we had Google and YouTube, and there were a lot of behind-the-scenes videos. And then I figured out, of course, one of the things is drawing the characters and stuff like that. But backgrounds and stuff that are not in the first focus, there's so many techniques you can use, and they are all so amazing when you look at them now, using different sheets of glass to add depth.
That's a great
Even
example.
though it's a two-dimensional thing, but when you have 10 sheets of glass with different things drawn on, it still looks, in reality, it is three-dimensional, but it also looks three-dimensional. It shows depth, but also what I figured out watching cartoons, but I didn't know how they ended up making that, was that when you have these layers,
yes,
and they move at different
parallax
paces, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And it's so simple, but it's amazing. And when you know these things, and then you figure out how special effects now are done, some of the things are actually quite similar.
Yes, 100%. I think you hit the nail on the head for why I'm going to stop using that expression, but that's the physics and the drawing part that collided in the most fantastic way for me.
Optics, basically optics.
It's not optical illusion, but it really uses the way you describe that kind of, if you put this on this level and you move one at a slightly different rate than the other, it creates the illusion of parallax, that there's distance between space. Fundamentally, that's physics. There's a science to it. And I think I never thought about it before. Maybe I've had an epiphany now. But I think maybe that's why the animation part became so much more attractive to me than comic books. Because it had this extra dimension of how do you mimic life, both in its technical and in its ethos, its pathos, its performance, in such a way that other people watching it will believe it, that it's real. So yeah, what you described as a multi-plane camera effect, which is amazing to think about it. They were saying, okay, how do we create depth, but we don't really have depth. So you print different, or you paint different planes, meaning, if there's grass really close to the camera, what would be, and then there's trees a little bit further back, and then there's the road, and then behind that there's a hill, and way behind that there's a castle. You paint that on glass at different levels, and the glass is separated, by I'm not gonna use feet, by 10 centimeters, 30 centimeters, and then you move the camera through those glass, so it actually feels like that the camera is moving that three-dimensional space, and it's genius to think about it. So this kind of marriage between science and art was really the most important part of how animation is this new medium. And not only that, you have all these different people with one collective goal, right? So you have painters who are working on the backgrounds. You have animators who are doing the animation. You have musicians who are making, that's why I think, I don't know if it still is, but definitely at the time, that animation was the highest form of art, right? So at one point, painting was the highest form of art until sculpture came around. Then sculpture was because you could experience sculpture in the round. And animation is experiencing art in 4 dimensions. So a character will be different in the beginning of the film than it will be at the end of the film, right? So that kind of 4-dimensionality where an object, in this case a character, changes over time and in space, for me is the highest form of art. Also because there's all these people working on one collective goal, which is to tell the story through animation.